Okay, so social contract theory. It is very interesting. It is very fundamental in understanding a lot of different branches of philosophy or legal studies, poli-sci, all that kind of stuff. But social contract theory is essentially different ways, different frameworks in which to approach the relationship between the constituency and who they are governed by. I feel like there are people outside my window and they can definitely hear me, but that's fine. But there are many different ways to approach this. What do we give up and what do we get in return? What is worth giving up? What liberties do we want to protect? And then a little fun thing to dive into that is just positive and negative liberties, freedom from, freedom to, which freedoms are more important. We can cluster them into different subsections. That's another thing. Anyway, back to social contract theory. A lot of social contract theorists are I should know actually what I'm talking about. I'm just talking nonsense. Cite your sources. Anyway, a lot of social contract theorists emerged with their theories. Oh my god, I've only been talking for a minute. Emerged. Okay, I know what I was saying. From like probably the 18th, I would say, obviously into the 21st century, but prime times was 18th, I would say late 18th to early 20th, late 19th centuries. And so obviously the frameworks in which they're working in, especially because the predominant amount of philosophy we read in the West is from old British guys, old white guys, American, just silly little rich white guys that account for their constituency, for who they identify with, obviously at the time, especially because we are considering countries that were so heavily segregated and so oppressed for so many people were oppressed. The theories will not account for their history, will not account for their rights, for they are not considered part of the voter base, they are not considered actual citizens within the social contract. So that's bad. But with all of these theories, by all of these men, about how we have to govern society, what interests do we protect, whose interests, and often, especially works coming from the UK or England and the United States, we see a lot of the idea of property rights, freedom to over freedom from, because this class of people that they're writing for were not often so concerned with freedom from terror. The U.S. has never really been, after the Revolutionary War, a war ground. It has not been somewhere in which other countries came in after the United States was established and tried to occupy it. And so those people are not going to be concerned with freedom from terror. They're going to be concerned with freedom to execute violence, because they identify with a state. And what is a state? A state is a place that has an organized monopoly over asserting dominance, asserting violence legitimately within a given territory. And so when you identify with a state, you are concerned with your freedom to occupy, with your freedom to step on, to obtain, to cultivate, to profit off of, to commodify, all of these things. This is a lot of nonsense. I'm just kind of saying what's coming to my brain. What was I saying? Okay, so this is where the racial contract and the sexual contract come into play. Sexual Contract is by Carol Pateman. She was a very predominant feminist thinker. I wish I could tell you from what times. I could actually just look it up right now. This is from the 80s, 1988. That's The Sexual Contract by Carol Pateman. I don't know how you say it. Racial Contract, Charles Mills, 1997. So these are both recent within the scope of the social contract theorists that we were talking about that are up to centuries old. When's Adam Smith from? So these are some predominant important thinkers in the social contract theory from their very first big push into society, into modern political discourse and thought. Adam Smith, 1790, let's see, what about John Locke? Where the heck? Oh my god, let's not talk like 1690. Okay, so these are a little earlier than I thought, actually. But what was I saying? So the two texts that I'm talking about, the racial contract, the sexual contract, are recent. They are a kind of, what's the word, addendum to what we were talking about. Yes, it is very, very important to examine and analyze the relationship between the state and those who are governed, because that underpins the entirety of everything ever that we experience, be it technology, be it culture, norms. What is normal? Why do we behave the way we do? Why do we organize our lives the way we do? You know, think of the American, easy thing to tie back to always, but it is always relevant, the American dream. Why is it organized in the way that it is? You know? That's tangential. I'm not going to go down that. But race, gender, and also sexuality, all of these different identifying characteristics of how we have sectioned people into and labeled, and then also because of this label then created a self-fulfilling prophecy in which stereotypes are perpetuated. Different, tangential, I need to stay on track. But yes, these are relevant, and these very basic fundamental ideas of philosophy with which these thoughts have such power that they, have formed the way we govern the world, specifically the neoliberal kind of approach to power and domination that we see in the West. It's another fun thing. The difference between a more authoritarian regime and neoliberal, and how they can achieve that's a whole nother thing. Tangential. Back, I am not staying on track. Sexual contract. Okay, so these two things are kind of self-explanatory. Sexual contract analyzes the relationship between gender and power, and the things we consider to be important, and what is relevant. What do we look for in a voter base? Whose words are legitimate? What ideas do we put forth? All of these things are not accounted for in so many schools of thought that we push forward, that we teach, that we perpetuate, that feel so key to our being. We accept as inherent because it is never analyzed. It has been given to us like this, and it is a cycle that perpetuates itself. Same thing with race, especially in the United States. We live in a modern day culture that was founded on something so brutal and so inhumane, and was so carefully crafted and meshed into meshed into the entire society of what has become the American fabric for the way of life, for the ideal, for the dream, what is considered true, what is just pushed forward as fact. And this is the part that is so ridiculous, because when you try to argue with someone about this and they're saying their shit, you just, like, at the end of it's like I'm saying 2 + 2 is 5. Like, it's like, what are you saying? You are just being untrue. You are just speaking against facts. Anyway, what was I saying? This. So gender and then race are key elements in what has made our society, in what has formed every single specific part of the wheels, the cogs, the wheels and the cogs and the wheels. And that is not considered. And so these both explain the issue with that, provide context, and then help you push forward with what we need to add, what needs to be developed, what needs to be considered when we take this basic kind of mold and dough of what is the social contract theory, what it is missing, what we must recontextualize, understand that it is important, or not just contextualize, because it is decontextualized. It's just like there's a ball of information and parts of it were cherry picked out, or perhaps they were never even added, and we are left with an incomplete view of what is presented as the whole. And that is what's dangerous, because that's wrong. Anyway, we're at 10 minutes here. Thanks for listening to me info dumping. Yeah.